Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Dallas Chamber of Government Affairs. Today, our guest is the Small Business Development Center that is residing right at the Columbia Gorge Community College. We will have Matt Ash and Carlos Mendoza as our guest. But before we do that, we're going to go around the room and introduce ourselves so they have an idea who's in the room and what organizations are represented. So with that, I'm going to start with Phil Brady.
Good morning, Phil Brady. I'm a candidate for Wasco County Commissioner, position 3. If you want a yard sign, the easy way to do that is to go to my website, votephilbrady.com. I'll drop that into the chat box.
Also, Phil, what do you do for your regular job?
I am a teacher at the Dallas High School, and this is my last year teaching. People have asked me, am I counting down the days? And no, I'm cherishing every moment. It's really been nice. My kids are working, doing labs, and I'm going to miss that.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for all you do with our students, too. So, Scott McKay.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Lisa. Scott McKay, as my daughter-in-law calls it, I'm fun employed at this point in time, although it doesn't seem as much fun as you're trying to sort through 40 years of stuff in order to, downsize. But and for Phil, I found some information I'm going to write about the 5 stages of 5 stages of retirement. And I'll be talking about that or writing about that in the future sometime, but it's kind of fascinating. I think I may be in stage 3. So anyway, so
well, keep us posted when you finally get to stage 5.
Yeah. Well, that could be death, but I'm not sure exactly what it is, but I'm trying to avoid that.
We know you'll still be active in our community because you just can't help it. So thank you. David Peters.
Good morning, everybody. Dave Peters, Columbia Cascade Housing, Mid-Columbia Housing Authority. Just to remind you, everything housing. We do have quite a bit of COVID assistance for rent, for mortgage payments. The state has a program for people to catch them up to $40,000 with a single payment. We have even assistance for utility payments. So give us a call if you need anything. Or know of anybody that needs anything.
Okay, thank you. Scott Radford.
Good morning, everybody. Scott Radford with Columbia Gorge Food Bank in the Dalles, and we serve Bosco County and Sherman. That's it.
Thank you. Corliss Marsh.
Good morning, everybody. Corliss Marsh with the Dalles, the Columbia Gorge Habitat for Humanity and the Restore, the library, and the Senior Center. So bingo's back. And I'm trying to learn, or Scott, I'm waiting for your list to come out because I want to see where I am because I'm trying to get through that list. But it's not working.
But we can't do our communities without either of you and all your volunteers. So don't go completely off that list. So Tanya Brumley.
Tanya Brumley with Northwest Natural.
Awesome, thank you. Matt, the direct line.
Matt Cole with Direct Line IT, provide IT services for businesses here in the Gorge.
Awesome, and driving, so we'll leave you alone. Stacy Cooper.
Stacy Cooper, Cooper Orchards.
Thank you, Stace. With that, we are going to let our guest take over. So Matt and Carlos, it is all yours. And thank you for being here this morning. I know it's early, but I appreciate, we look forward to hearing some information about SBDC.
Okay, good morning. Matt, I'm going to start here because you're going to be the feature presenter today. So I'm just going to start. My name is Carlos Mendoza. I'm with the Small Business Development Center, housed out of the Columbia Gorge Community College. Also representing the Capital Access team and the CCB out of Clackamas. And we're excited to be here this morning. We do have many updates regarding the SBDC. First of which is that we are back to seeing people in person. So we can now do counseling and advising via telephone, Zoom, and in person as preferred by our clients. So that's something exciting. We're glad to have people back in our building showing our beautiful view. We love showing that off. And it's the perfect time as well. So we're excited about that. It means that things are looking up for everybody. One thing that we have going on at the moment is our dedication to improving the childcare provider problem in the Gorge. And we are teaming up with the childcare partners, and they're educating us on their program, and at the same time we are gonna pay it back and pay it forward by providing technical assistance to childcare providers so that they can get their business going. And anything we can help with: business planning, resource management, capital access, hiring employees, and managing regulatory processes. So we're very excited about that. There has been some talks and some movement forward. So it's baby steps, but we are getting there. Another thing is I'd like to introduce Matt Ash. He's one of our newest members of the SBDC. He is bringing forward a lot of knowledge in brewing and crafting and winemaking. So he'll be providing some of his knowledge through the SBDC and bringing forward a strong fermentation process or fermentation program to the community. So Matt Ash, if you just take it on from here, I myself would love to hear more about it.
Thanks, Carlos. And Lisa, I did just remember, sorry, my brain was still waking up when you mentioned it earlier. I do have a slideshow that I can share that might help everybody. Would that be okay?
Yes, let me get you, and then you'll be all set.
Perfect, thank you. While you're doing that, so my name is Matt. My wife and I moved here to the Gorge 4 years ago. My wife also works at the Columbia Gorge Community College in Student Services. And so I've been with the SBDC just a short time now, but most of my career has been in management, leadership, both in the wine industry, excuse me, and in a few other industries as well. And most recently in the Gorge here, I've been working at Syncline Winery for the last 3 years with James and Poppy Mantone, both making wine in the cellar, working in the vineyard with James on production, as well as working sales and education in the tasting room. And so I met with Greg about this opportunity to kind of, I think a lot of us know that the Gorge has some of the best wine, beer, and cider in the country. But we don't really have any place for professionals to really come get a strong foundation in working in this industry. And so Greg has kind of always had it as an idea that he wanted to have a fermentation program at the college. And then I met with him and he brought me on to kind of get it going. So we do have some exciting things in that realm coming down the pipe pretty soon, both our spring classes that coming up now, actually spring term. And then we just announced some summer classes as well that we already have on the books. So how's the screen share coming, Lisa?
You should be able to grab it because I made you co-host.
Oh, thank you. Awesome. Okay, so let me button.
It should.
Screen share, correct.
It is before 8 a.m.
Yeah. Right. Perfect. Oops. Okay. All right. Everybody see the slideshow?
Yes.
Oh, perfect. Alrighty. So of course, this is at the SBDC. This is where our funding comes from. So the Small Business Administration, America's SBDC Oregon, Columbia Gorge Community College, kind of our main partner that houses us and supports us, and then as well as we get funding from Business Oregon. And so a little bit of background and history of kind of how we got here to this wine and beer and cider program. So in 2018, there was a feasibility study that was conducted by Thomas P. Miller Associates. And really just throughout with their research, collecting data, a lot of interviews with industry professionals, they found that it was, in their opinion, a really, a needed thing to have some sort of fermentation program here in the Gorge. And they also outlined some of the key focuses that this program should have. And one of the things that we found that with the nearest to us wine programs that are available through colleges, Chemeketa College has a great wine program. We have Oregon State University, Washington State University. But one of the things that really hasn't been focused on very strongly in our area is actually workforce development. And of course, that kind of resonated pretty strongly with Greg, for the SBDC and kind of our goal there. And so one of the focuses that a lot of people that the Thomas Miller Associates interviewed said that they were really looking for, labor, skilled labor, and then having a strong technical assistance or technical training within the wine, beer, and cider industries. And so that's something that we have definitely majorly focused on in the program that Greg and I are developing currently. So they did, there's a 20 something pages of the feasibility study. So if anybody else is interested in digging in, just let me know. I can send you a copy of it. But it also showed that where we compare to other regions in the Pacific Northwest as far as our hospitality sector as well. So it gave us some ideas about the growth of the winery, brewery, cidery industry from a sales perspective and a retail perspective as well. And so it's just a lot of really great information. But, this was in 2018, and there really wasn't a lot going, that happened right after it was released. The biggest obstacle was that there wasn't anyone that they had identified to start the program and really kind of lead it and get it going. And with the college, it took, things take a little bit longer. For curriculum, we have to show kind of, that it's needed, that it's wanted, and we start small. And so this is kind of a great way that we've been able to get it started through the SBDC and our programming. So our program goals, kind of three-tiered: education, workforce development, and entrepreneurship. So education, obviously the technical training, both in brewing, in cider making, in viticulture and enology, in also things, logistic things like, we're hoping to have, classes where someone can get forklift certified, which is important in winemaking and brewing and kind of the warehouse part of it. But just the kind of focusing on the education, training our people in the industry and the different classes that we're going to offer. Workforce development, part of it through those classes that are more focused on, CTE sort of classes as opposed to more academic offerings, but also working with our small businesses that are in the wine, beer, and cider and fermentation industries to help develop their businesses and help train their staff and train their workforce. And then lastly is entrepreneurship. So the pipe dream, the lofty goal in the sky is to eventually have a place that can kind of act as a small business incubator, where within the fermentation industry. So one of the things that was highlighted in the feasibility study was actually for breweries and cideries, especially if they want to try an experimental batch, a new recipe, they don't often have the ability to tie up one of their fermenters for 2 weeks to try something new. And so with this, so having the ability or a different facility to have kind of a small batch test run of a new brew, a new cider, is something that was identified by a lot of the folks in our beer and cider industry as a need. And so we're hoping to eventually in the future, identify a location here in the Gorge, ideally in the Dalles, that we can have small batch brewing and cider making and maybe some wine making implements there. So that way, if we have, for example, Freebridge Brewing wants to try a new batch, he doesn't have to, tie up one of his 4-barrel systems there. He can do a small test run at our incubator facility. And then those also looking to get into the fermentation industry will have a place where they can, we'll have carboys, we'll have presses, we'll have tanks, we'll have things where they can learn, and then working with the SBDC as well can, write a business plan, can kind of do their research and kind of get more industries going and more businesses going here in the Gorge. Now we're still kind of building the program, but right now these are some of our possible program structures through the college. We are actually, Greg and I are actually meeting later today with Susan Lewis at the Gorge, at the Columbia Gorge College, about the non-credit training certificates, or an NCTC. So this is our first thing we're going to pursue, mainly because given that it's non-credit, the barriers to getting a program off the ground are a little lower. So we can actually get an NCTC going in fairly quick fashion through the college. And even though it is non-credit, it is going to be a training certificate. And so it's designed, we actually have it built, if Susan says we can do it, in a way that someone could get in 2 terms. So in 6 months, someone could get a training certificate, an NCTC, through the college for either beer, wine, or cider. And so they will get classes like sales classes. So sales and marketing, they will get, how to start a business. They will get, writing a business plan. They will get classes like sensory classes, intro to brewing. We'll do classes. I'm really excited. We have one of the head brewer, Campbell from Frame Brewing. He's going to teach a brewing class this summer. So they'll have classes that will, at the end of 6 months, will basically give someone who either already works in the fermentation industry or is looking to get into the industry, will give them a really good foundation of how to work at a winery, brewery, or cidery. Now, initially, this will be focused on the workforce. So this is going to be more for the retail and for the sales part of the business. We are still developing our courses to add more, like a vineyard worker or a viticulturist or a head brewer, those sorts of programs. But we knew the need really was right now for retail staff. So people to work in the brew pub, folks to work in a winery tasting room or a cidery tasting room as well. And so that's what our NCTCs at first are going to focus on.
Matt, actually, Phil Brady has a question for you.
Oh yeah, please.
Matt, it sounds like it's addressing the needs here, which are for workers. At a higher level, is there a nationally recognized certification for viticulture and brewing?
Yeah, so our kind of the NCTC that we're going to start with, the non-credit training certificate, is going to kind of be our proof of concept to the college, as it were. And so we're hoping that we get these off the ground. Then we will just the college will be able to kind of see that it's got merit and that it's wanted in the community. And then they will actually take on the certificate in the degree program. And so now the certificate, an actual credit certificate, is actually just about the same process as approving a new degree at the college. And so that's why we went for the non-credit certificate at first. But it will absolutely be, the goal is to have a 2-year degree and a credit certificate that would be nationally accepted as well. So that's the goal.
All right, Stacy Cooper, you have a question?
Sorry, I'm muting. So listening to this and thinking about what Dan Spatz is doing with the trying to get an ag education program, some of that stuff, some of the things you're talking about, forklift and getting labor, that sounds like a lot of that could coincide together with your program. Have you talked have you guys talked about that at all?
Oh, absolutely. Greg meets with Dan, I think, every couple of weeks on because Greg is focusing mostly at this time with looking at funding and kind of the bigger logistical and kind of structural components of the program. So looking down the road for a building, but we absolutely are communicating a lot and working with Dan as far as trying to see what ways that we can roll these programs together, either in shared facilities or shared funding. But yeah, absolutely. Greg was at my first presentation a few months ago to the wine industry, and then some folks at the college, and you're totally right. There's a lot of overlap there, and we really think it is something that can work together well, because you can't make wine, beer, or cider without agriculture, and so and it's a big part of what we do in this county, in this kind of rural area as well. So absolutely.
So then to that, because of ag overtime and all of our regulations that we are getting dumped on us right now, and listening to the testimonies for ag overtime, I think something that would help us as growers, especially those that are in the 300 acre and less, would be getting vertically integrated, and going out and maybe talking to growers what apples you need for cider and things like that, because we are not going to survive this last round of regulations unless we get some help trying to get a finished product to market versus just a raw product.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. That's a great point, because and one of the benefits of the fermentation side of agriculture is, to a certain extent, no one really cares what the grapes or the apples or the product looks like, because you're going to mash it up and you're going to ferment it and you're going to press it. And so the visual component, which I think is a lot of, with apples, especially like for apples for eating, you have a lot of, layers of culling and picking and sorting. Whereas, if you're going to turn them into cider, you just need a couple of, pull the leaves out, pull the sticks out. And if there's a bruise, it's okay. If it's ugly, it's okay. It'll still make great cider. So I could see that as being, looking, once those labor regulations are coming down, looking at ways that, you can spend less labor on and get just as much for your product. But we are going to be offering too as well, talking about vertical, integration is even some of the classes that we currently have through the SBDC, I think would really help with that, that business, creating, changing your business plan, or looking for, working with Carlos for capital access if you wanted to switch, your business model a little bit. We have some great advisors that I think have dealt with a lot of things that could really help with some of that, either in their coursework or just, the free advising that we offer at the SBDC as well. So yeah, does that answer your question? Sorry.
Yeah, it does. Because I think, kind of just trying to think outside the box, agritourism, yeah. And then that was the other comment I had on just your program in general. I went to a conference down in Salem and found out about the, with Diane Turney at Clackamas and doing the transitional one. And I never saw anything on the site when I get emails about that here. I don't know if I just missed it. So some of the classes that are available across the state of Oregon, it would be nice to see a few more of those come through, because that's been a great class on that transitional farm class that I've been doing. So
that definitely does. Yeah. And a lot of those too, I don't know if you know this, like regardless of what region you live in, just about anybody has access to, especially if they're, virtual or pre-recorded, access to, like you're doing, using any of the classes offered through the SBDC, regardless of what area you live in, you do have access to that.
Yeah, I usually see the ones for Eastern Oregon, but I've never seen on that email that goes out. I hadn't seen the other ones, so yeah.
All right. Any other questions while we're at a pausing point? All right. So as I mentioned, we're starting with the non-credit training certificate for the short term, but the long-term goal is to have a credit certificate and then eventually a 2-year degree in fermentation studies as well. So, question for you, Stacey? Oh no. All right. So our spring term, starts very soon, and we do have. So these are classes that we started. My experience is mostly being in the wine industry. So we added some classes that are available that I knew I could kind of get going pretty quickly while we develop others. And so we do have classes that are open right now. So we're doing a business technology class for wine, beer, and cider industries. So this one is more about kind of what are the basic sort of technology softwares that a small business owner would need to use. So your email marketing, your customer relationship management, your inventory, your social media. And so kind of touching lightly on all the big pieces of technology that you would need to know, need to use and how to use them in the wine, beer, and cider industries if you're a small business owner. So nothing too crazy, we're not, but just kind of the basics, like I said, email marketing, website design, social media, inventory management, CRMs, and kind of touching on those. I have a wine 101 class as well. Now this is kind of A to Z about wine. It's how it grows, where it grows, how to taste it, what are the chemical components of it, how is the wine made. There is wine tasting involved in that class, so anyone signing up would have to be 21 or over. That one's held at my wine shop downtown here. We have an effective branding for the wine industry. So this is storytelling for sales and connection. So this one is less about branding as a whole, but more about folks that work in retail for wine, beer, and cider, whether it's a tasting room, a brew pub, they give tours, agro tours. This is how to connect with guests and how to tell a story that connects people to sales. My favorite thing in the world is storytelling, and so it's a really easy thing to do in the wine industry because there's so much rich stuff to tell about the stories here. And then industry insights. This is going to be kind of a monthly industry kind of webinar. We're going to kind of meet and talk about common issues in the different industries and so forth. So a question, good sir.
So you mentioned where it grows. How dispersed do you think wine and grape growing could be in our region? How far south of the Columbia do you think would be viable? The Columbia Valley AVA goes down into Oregon from this side a little bit. In the Dalles, the Columbia Gorge AVA, so that's American Viticultural Area. That's our legal wine regions in the U.S. They have different bounds, but as far as viable grape growing, as long as there's access to irrigation water, if you pick the right variety, you could grow pretty far south in Oregon, east of the Cascades. Eastern Oregon can definitely grow grapes if they pick the right grapes. And as long as the biggest issue there is going to be access to irrigation, just because there's not enough rainfall to keep the grapes viable on their own. But the Columbia Valley, is, a great example. The average rainfall is, 6 to 8 inches per year in the Columbia Valley. And it's, where the, Washington State's the, what is it? 4th largest wine grower in the country. So as long as you have access to some of the basics and you pick the right grape varieties, for example, Pinot Noir loves cold climate, so don't plant that east of the Cascades unless you have a lot of elevation. But something like Tempranillo, which is from Spain, or Grenache, which is from southern France, could do really well in a hot climate, especially as things get warmer and drier. That's something we're looking at, is picking the right varieties that match are going to be helping us with climate change. So, so pretty far south, as long as you do it right. I don't have it on this slide, but we are getting ready to, through the college, have our summer term available. And so we're going to have an intro to cider, craft cider class, as well as an intro to craft brewing. And the 2 other classes that are geared more towards, bars, restaurants, etc. That is going to be
sorry, my cat is behind me going crazy on my door. We're going to do a how to build an effective beverage program, and then how to train staff on selling more beer, wine, and cider. Those are going to be 2 other classes that we're going to offer this summer. And that is it for my presentation. What other questions does anyone have?
So Matt, on those classes that you're going to be doing this summer, is that going to be based on the Dallas campus or Hood River or both?
They, one of them will be in Hood River. That's the one that Campbell, the brewery at Freeman, is going to host. One of them is going to be at my wine shop here in the Dalles, and then 2 of them are going to be virtual.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
And those will, I'm assuming, be in the class schedule that comes out for the summer that the college puts out?
Exactly. Yep.
Okay.
Now through the SBDC, all of our courses, so we just recently had, after it sounds like a long time Greg was working on it, an ability to handle our payment for our SBDC classes in-house. In the past, it was a little bit of a challenge because folks had to register essentially as a student at CGCC, pay them for the class, and then the college would tell us that they paid, and then we could mark it as so. But we just recently switched it to now all the payment, registration, everything is 100% in-house at the through the SBDC website. And so you can still get all the information through the college, but it'll just send you right to our website to sign up.
So be sure to, and I appreciate you, Matt, you being just there, but be sure to tell Greg that even though your classes are listed within the college, that the chamber can help push that, so that, because those are of interest. We get questions for that. And so we definitely want to make sure we have that information down here so that we're directing them to the exact person they need to be instead of giving them a circle, because we know that by the time they get to point B, they stop. So we want to make sure we get it directly to you because they are of interest. We're getting calls for that, and people are talking to us about that. So I'm so glad that this program is starting. This is very cool. And I'm going to let Phil Brady ask his question.
Okay.
I guess I have a lot of questions today. I haven't heard kombucha, Mary, mentioned. I heard that somewhere in the past, but is this part of this training?
Yes and no. So that is part of our longer term goal, is to have fermentation in food sciences. We do have a food sciences program at the college as right now. We would like to eventually add things like kombucha, things like tofu, other fermented, sourdough bread, etc. We do want to eventually add courses into that program, or into our program that have to do with food. But it's one of those things that we'll have to add as we have the ability, as there's enough people pulling in the class. And frankly, as I have an instructor who can teach it, because I don't know anything about that. But that is the other really great thing about how we've structured our classes currently, is because our classes with SBDC go through the community education department of the college. There isn't the same sort of requirements, like you don't have to have a master's degree in kombucha in order to teach kombucha fermentation class. You can just sign up with Jonathan Neptune, I believe is our community education director. And so, it's a great opportunity because it's a little bit easier and shorter of a runway to have these, but really value added classes for folks that have the experience in the industry. What else? What other questions? I love questions. I get tired of monologues.
This is Stacy again. So, like, if you were to add food or kombucha, would you need to be working with the Oregon State to get the nutritional value? Is that different than like beer and wine?
It would be in that sense. Yes, I believe I don't know. We do have, I think, a program at the college for that, or a system for that as well, because we do have a commercial kitchen at the college that actually businesses can rent, catering companies can rent, but also we have a couple of small businesses that are actually starting using the kitchen as their kind of incubator that we have at the college. But I believe, yes, if we did something like kombucha, yeah, there would have to be registration of nutrition facts and ingredients with the FDA. beer, wine, and cider haven't gotten there yet. I know some regions in the country have adopted an ingredients list, just because there's in other states they allow a lot more things into your wine products and your beer and your cider that most people wouldn't be okay with if they saw it on a ingredients list. So
yeah,
I'm gonna let my cat out. I'll be right back. There we go.
Okay, I think we all have something like that in our house. So yes. Any other questions that you have? So Matt, I'm going to ask you two questions. One, what can we as your community help you with?
I mean, first and foremost is we got to get people in classes to kind of show the college that that it's wanted, that it's needed. Excuse me. That's the biggest, and then just spreading the word. We will be, there's some grants that Greg is looking at for next year that we'll need community support, both in dollars, but also just stated public support. And so those are things that we would, as we look to fund the next stage of the program. So for instance, the business incubation or being able to have our own facility for fermentation would really benefit from is having matching funds, but also right now is really just spreading the word, reaching out to folks that are working these industries already and let them know that there's an opportunity for career technical education through the college now in beer, wine, and cider, and that they can hopefully, if everything goes right, they can get an NCTC, a non-credit certificate within 6 months that would hopefully help them in their current role or any new roles that they're looking for. So,
Great. Yeah, just send us any information you guys have if SBDC's got a separate flyer or something like that, because that is something that we will help you guys promote.
Yeah, I don't have any. Everything I've done so far has been digital. So, but I'll talk to Greg and see about getting some flyers printed. That's a good idea.
Well, actually, just send us the digital, because we do most of our stuff is digital based, and we can just print what we need. But send us digital so that we can get that out there.
Awesome.
Yep. All right. So, Matt, this is where, do you have questions for us? You've heard which organizations are in the room. You get a chance to get us back.
All right. Man, now I have to remember all the organizations that are in the room from when I was asleep 40 minutes ago. I guess my first question is, as from y'all's perspective, not necessarily working in the industry, what challenges do you see that like the industry would really have that we can address with either class programming or any sort of infrastructure? Like, do you see as business owners in the community, part of the community, do you see as a potential challenge for us that we might not see at this point that we could for either developing wine, beer, cider programming for courses for students, industry in general? Is there anything anyone's noticed that you think we might need to know about? Or
so I think part of your model, you talked about addressing the workforce and training and that, so that our people are trained in that, because that is our biggest issue right now, is just workforce in general. Lack of talent or lack of skill in the areas that are needed. So for me, to know that there's going to be some training supplied besides the education of how to or the pieces, but also that staff training would be essential, because the last thing we want is, the last thing we want is to have this product or business, but nobody can really answer those questions or, be that entrepreneur, but also customer service, because that just is not a great model for business. So that would be my concern on that. My second concern is if you're starting these entrepreneurs and products, is do we, besides a maker space kind of a thing, because we need them to grow into their own spaces, do we have the capacity and the inventory that these people can do? What kind of building do they need? You know, obviously they're going to need a kitchen type facilities and all of that, and power and water. So do we have the capacity to? I would love it, and I hope that your answer is yes. But those are the things. Are we researching that along with the training so that when we get these successfully trained and certified, they have a place to go to?
The answer is we're working toward, that's something we want. Absolutely. Part of our goal, like our vision with the incubation center, the small business incubation center for fermentation, is that there would be, it wouldn't just be an incubation center for production. So how to make it, how to brew a batch of beer, how to make cider, how to press wine, but it would also have a retail component that where, you know, depending on our location, that we could actually, you know, those small batches that people are creating or trying, a small business owner would have a retail outlet in the same facility that consumers would come and be able to try these products to build excitement and to really help a small business get off the ground by building customers because they can try the product there. And so there's a couple of models for that we've looked at in the wine industry in the Willamette Valley, for example. In Carlton, there's a place called the Carlton Winemaker Studio, and it's a custom crush facility. So there's many different wineries that make wine under the same roof, but their retail outlet that they have connected to it tastes the products of anyone who is in the building. And so a consumer can go and try, you know, in one location can try, you know, 5 or 6 or 7 different brands that they wouldn't have been able to go to individually in one day. And so that's something that we're looking at as a potential model, because again, it's not just about making a good product. You know, as an old saying in the wine industry, it's harder to sell wine than it is to make it. You got to sell it, you got to build a business. And so having all those resources under one roof is really what we want to do, because I feel like it makes the most sense, to have it all under the same roof. So that would be the big crux with that one, is going to be finding the right location that can meet our facilities and logistics needs, but also meet the location need of being in a place where there's going to be consumers nearby, like somewhere downtown the Dalles would be amazing. Where there's walking traffic, where we're already trying to draw people to those sorts of locations. Because this is really kind of run by the SBDC at this time, that is really where the component of helping a small business owner learn how to do what they need to do for their business, not just for their product. And so with our free advising, with our courses that we offer already, kind of because we're kind of leading the charge on the fermentation program right now, we definitely have a lot of great access to the business side of it, for sure.
This is Brian Peck. I used to work for Oregon State University. I retired there, the Dalles. Are you, one of the things that Oregon State University, and so does WSU, has very strong food science programs, and WSU has a very, well, OSU as well, wine grape growing research. So it's something maybe just to keep in mind. There's some good resources out there that you might consider tapping into, especially when you look at some of the technology sides for growing grapes and things like that, as well as the processing. So just something.
Yeah, thank you. And that's also something that we've taken into consideration in how we're building this program, is that we know, we know there's people that have amazing programs, way better than we could probably build when it comes to the research, the academics, especially around the growing, the agriculture and the production. And while we do want to have parts of that in our program, of course, it's needed, we really wanted to do what we felt was a little bit less represented, which is the integrating of the production into the business, starting businesses, running businesses, and kind of the workforce development piece. And that's, we've definitely worked with, looked at some modeling from OSU, from Washington State University, as well, as far as for their production and their research. And then we're just looking to add our USP, our unique selling point of having more business focus as well. And that's where we think we'll really kind of set ourselves apart. Is that what we're hoping? But
so this is Stacy again. To Brian's point, or I mean, when you are I mean, I know what your goal is in training the workforce, but and I'm excited about this ag program that Dan's working on, but just and maybe encouraging those that may not fit the niche that in the classes, but thinking outside the box and helping growers, or that technology piece, like how do we get that coal apple or an apple low enough to get into cider with technology and picking, and just encouraging people to reduce hand labor.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and that's the real research kind of technology piece of it, like you're talking about, like finding ways to help our systems. That is where we really feel like that we have the opportunity to work with what Dan's doing with the Ag Tech program, to kind of incorporate that into our fermentation program. That's something that we think, until he approached us, until he saw what we were doing and approached us, we're like, wouldn't have thought of it, but knowing what he had going on there, and trying to incorporate that into our fermentation program is something I think that would also really set us apart, because you're right, we need to find solutions to some of these things, both for labor shortages, but also for for climate change. We got to figure different ways to grow. In the wine industry in the Northwest for the last 60, 70 years, we've had a cold, rainy, marginal climate on the west side of the Cascades. And so we've been trying to get riper grapes. And now the weather is giving us all the ripeness we want. And now we need to look for ways to kind of pump the brakes a little bit. And so looking at different ways to grow, to whether it's, how we trellis, how we prune our vines, how we irrigate them, cover crops, all that. And so the Ag Tech program is a really exciting part that we're hoping to be able to incorporate strongly into our program.
Any other questions? I think we all need coffee.
Yeah.
Or wine, one of the two, right?
Not till after lunch.
It's lunch somewhere, come on.
I had a question. So Dave Peters, Columbia Cascade Housing. My question has nothing to do with that though. So you mentioned some of your classes, like the introduction ones, maybe this summer. Are they in the evening? Because I think a lot of people that might be interested are already in like the cherry industry already, or the apples later in the year. So are those going to be accessible by people that are working somewhat in the field, or are they all,
Yes, that's one thing we're trying to do, depending on any facility restraints we have. We really want to have classes in the late afternoon and the evenings as well. Okay. We don't have any classes that are morning classes. I do have some that I couldn't get after 5, but are like in the 3 or 4 o'clock. And so something where maybe, if you start early, in that industry and you can get off by 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock, make it to a class, because that's a big part of it as well. You're totally right. This isn't kids coming out of high school and their whole life is college. This is people that are working every day, and you can't, take a day off just to, take a class. So that's something we're trying to incorporate into the program, either by having them virtually, or having them pre-recorded, or having them at a time that working adults can attend.
Well, I'm not seeing any other questions. So that means you did a great presentation because you answered all of them before we asked. No,
I went to sleep.
No, you didn't, Matt. So one, I want to say a big thank you to you and Carlos for being here today. Carlos, do you have any follow-up or anything that you would like to add?
Just want to remind everybody that if, on behalf of the community college, that there are entrepreneurship programs available, classes for any future entrepreneurs or people that are considering going into starting their own business. And aside from that, we have, of course, the SBDC. We offer technical classes, QuickBooks, Excel, how to read financial statements, how to write a business plan, what it takes to open a business in Oregon, the regulations of it, and that can all be found in our OregonSBDC.org website. And another thing is that I myself, aside from the business advising, I'm also fluent in Spanish. So if you have any family, friends, neighbors, employees that you think would be great entrepreneurs, and they just lack the confidence to go about it by themselves, I'm here. It's one of my main focuses is helping the minority program and community in helping them reach their financial goals and business dreams. So I really appreciate it. If you know anybody, just have a look for Carlos Mendoza at the SBDC, and I'll be happy to have a chat with them.
Thank you. Thank you guys both. I will be actually reaching out to both of you. I love having SBDC backyard, and I apologize. The lawn mowing people are here right now. So that's what you're hearing in the background. It's not a hubby that I can say stop and wait until 8 o'clock. But I, as the chamber, am constantly referring people up to the SBDC department and Greg, just because, one, we want businesses to start successfully. And many of them come here with a concept and their passion, but they don't have the business or know-how or how to even get started. And what a resource we have. I've been a firm believer of SBDC for 20 years now. And so I appreciate that the team is growing and that you guys are here and just meeting the needs where they need to be met. So I do appreciate you guys. You guys do amazing work. As Greg always said, he can kick the tires and be blunt where I can't. Yeah. So, but it's great because you have access to the research and in that market and what's knowing what works, what doesn't, and then helping them formulate so that they can get from that passion to the door opening. So you guys are quite the miracle workers on those, and I know it takes a lot of work. So thank you from the chamber, because we appreciate having you as a partner in our community. But with that, I'm going to give you guys 4 extra minutes in your day, and you can go gulp some more coffee before the 8 o'clock Zoom meeting, I'm sure is on your schedule. But thank you again, Matt and Carlos. Thank you for being here and answering questions. And if anybody is wondering how to get a hold of them, you just look at SBDC at the college and you found them. Matt also has a tasting room that's in the downtown area. So it's the Win House, right?
Yeah, Wine House, yeah.
Wine House. It looks like Win. I have friends that are spelt Win, so yes.
It's my wife's family is all from South Africa, and so that is how you spell wine in Afrikaans. Oh, it's just spelled slightly differently. So yeah, so a little wine school. I teach educational classes, and then have a retail shop available as well. We'll be open for First Friday this week for the Dalles. So come on by. We're at the Foley House on 4th Street.
So yes, I've got you on my schedule to stop by. So we appreciate you both, and all of you, the rest of you, you are just as important. I want to know that. But all of you guys have a great day, and we will be talking and seeing you next Thursday.
Thanks so much for having us.
Thank you.